when you grow up in this area right here. That first little McDonald's as you go into town here,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like the first McDonald's in Chautauqua County. And, you know, I'm going to kind of say a little bit about it tonight, but I played on the first Westfield Midget League football team. And our very first game was against Lakewood.
Oh, no kidding.
And we got our butts beat, but so to come home right now to this after 55 years, it's unbelievable.
So what did your dad do for a living?
My dad was a traveling salesman.
Right.
And he traveled all through Western New York, up around Ohio. He had an office in Buffalo. And at this, he sold the big car wash units that you drive in and they pull your car through. He was like, sold those units right there. And he would, you know, especially this time of the year with the salt on the roads and stuff. So he would install these big car wash units that you see now. And
probably did a lot of work with Augie Carlson.
Well, and then hold up, and then early when I was growing up, he sold and set up laundromats. And so he sold all the equipment for GE Frigidaire, would set up laundromats. In fact, we owned a laundromat in downtown Westfield, and I would clean it. One of my jobs was to clean. So I had the cleanest basketball practice, uniform, on the team. So every night after practice, I would run uptown and clean the laundromat. But yeah, he was a traveling salesman. We grew up right on East Main Street in Westfield.
Was sports a natural thing for you?
Yeah, it was. It was a natural. I really was blessed. All my dad, and I had uncles. I had my Uncle John, in fact, pitched a no-hitter for Westfield against Jamestown back in the 50s. I think I'm right. So my uncle, he was a heck of a ball player up here, but all they did was just, being in Westfield, where you were close to Cleveland, watching the Indians, watching the Browns, but the big thing was going to Buffalo, watching the Buffalo Bills. And my very first Buffalo Bill game, that was it. I'm 8 or 9 years old, and I'm going to be a pro football player for the Bills. That was it. But what's really ironic now for me, and I tell the story, I'm currently coaching at Grambling State University, and there is such an unbelievable tradition there with Coach Eddie Robinson. But as a young boy, probably 10 or 11 years old, going to a Buffalo Bill game, they were playing the San Diego Chargers. And I don't know if you ever remember, and I know, Greg, you probably do, Ernie Ladd, and him coming out of that locker room, and he was like a giant. And so back in those days, a lot of the black pro football players, not a lot of them, all of them, came from the historically black colleges and universities that I'm coaching at now. Now, we don't put out that many pros now. That was the only place they could go play college football. But when I'm on that campus, I tell those stories to those kids. I knew about Grambling when I was about 9 or 10 years old.
No question. It was our era. Grambling and Eddie Robinson were legendary.
It was like the Notre Dame. There was two schools that everybody really heard about. It was Grambling and Notre Dame football, but really, at that time. I mean, there was a lot of teams, but it just seemed like those teams got the most press.
So you literally worked your way through Westfield, Cardinal Manzini. Mm-hmm. Now, was there a reason why you went to Cardinal Manzini in Dunkirk? Yeah,
there was. As a young athlete, my dream was to go to Notre Dame. I mean, my dad took my brother and I and Mom to the University of Notre Dame, and I'll never forget, he walked in an Eric Precision's office at about 12 or 13 years old, and I've got pictures to prove it. Walked into Eric Precision's office and told Coach Peterson, he said, that's my son, Mark, and he's going to be playing quarterback for you one day. Now, and we were running up and down the field at Notre Dame, so my dream was to go to Notre Dame. And I was sitting in English class my junior year of high school, and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get to Notre Dame out of Westfield. That could be kind of tough. Now, Cardinal Manzini was of course a Catholic high school, and had really I knew about the athletes that they had that were going on to college. They had Ed Ransford and Dan Wolf, Bob Pelsick, those guys. Bob's in the Hall of Fame here. I watched them, and I'm going, God, that's the only school in this whole area where kids were getting football scholarships. But I wrote a letter to Eric Peterson in English class at Westfield, and I'll be darned, I got a letter back in a week.
Wow.
Tom Pagna, his quarterback coach, wrote me back and he said, Mark, we're having a football camp in Massachusetts in July. Now this is in 1970. And I went out in the Great Vineyards, earned the money, caught a bus at about 10 o'clock out of Ripley, and rode all night to Massachusetts. Got off that bus, they picked me up in Boston. It was on a campus called Easton Unit. The whole staff of Notre Dame was there. But there was also other college coaches there too. Bill Parcells was coaching at Army. A guy named Dave Adolph from the University of Kentucky. So I went to this football camp and was chosen the top quarterback in the camp by the Notre Dame staff. My only issue was I couldn't break a 5-flat 40. Now I don't want that on tape. But if I had been able to run a 4.8, I probably would have had that scholarship because they loved the way I threw the ball. But long story short, when I got back, my dad had talked to Coach Moscato, and they worked out a situation for me to be able to transfer that senior year. And I went there, and we started out a little rough, but really came on and finished strong, and was offered a full scholarship to go to Florida State University, which was the best place for me to go at that time because it was a pro-style offense. You know, Fred Biletnikoff, who was from Erie, was from there. A big quarterback named Steve Tenzie. And man, it was a great place to be. Unfortunately, I had a chance to play, but you know, sometimes those dreams don't come true, and ended up going into coaching, which I thought was another great passion. I remember my last opportunity of playing football, and it kind of, you knew that dream was not going to come true, so yeah.
So you work your way into coaching, and then ironically you find yourself working in black schools. White coach black schools, no doubt would have to then go out and recruit. Tell me, you must have some stories along those lines.
Oh my God, how much time do we have?
Until
yeah. Well, so what happens is I start teaching and coaching high school football in Tallahassee, Florida, at a really big high school called Lincoln High School. And I'm coaching in my second year, and Shan Gailey, do you remember Shan Gailey? All right, so Shan Gailey was coaching at the University of Florida, and I'm coaching at Lincoln High School. And Shan is coming to Lincoln High School to recruit some of our players. And so we're around the same age, so I said, Shan, how do you get into college coaching? He said, well, you need to be a graduate assistant. He goes, you need to call Bobby Bowden at that time, had just gotten to Florida State. And he says, well, you need to call Coach Bowden. And I said, well, you know, I don't really know him. But so I got on the phone. His brother was playing for, I mean, not his brother, his son was playing for us. And so I kept calling Bobby on the phone. I called for a month, got his secretary. You know, I'm about ready to throw the towel in on talking to Bobby. So I finally get a call. He said, hey, let's get together. got together, but he had promised the job to someone else. So I said, well, so about a week or so later, I'm walking through the mall in Tallahassee, and there was this other school in town called Florida A&M University. And that was the home of Jake Gaither. I don't know if you heard about Jake Gaither, who was a huge coaching legend. Had Bob Hayes. And I'm looking at the team picture, and they had a new coach by the name of Rudy Hubbard. And Rudy was the first black coach at Ohio State in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Rudy played for Woody Hayes. And Rudy had recruited Archie Griffin. Well, he was young and got the head job at Florida A&M. So I'm looking at the team picture, and I had heard about Rudy Hubbard. And there was a white coach on the staff, and his name was Fred Goldsmith, who later years became head coach at Duke and at Rice. He was the defensive coordinator on that staff. So I'm looking, I'm going, wow, well, he's got a white coach on the staff. I just wanted to coach college football. I didn't care. And I got on the phone, and I'm saying, well, this ought to be good. You know, Coach Hubbard picks up the phone, and we got together, and he says, he goes, Mark, I've seen you coach at your high school, and he brought me in as his running back coach. That first year, 1978, we win the first Division I AA national championship, and we play on ABC and beat University of Massachusetts in Wichita Falls, Texas. And 2 weeks ago, the College Football Hall of Fame invited me and that whole team to Atlanta, where they celebrated and recognized that 1978 Rattler football team. I did not get a chance to go because I knew I was coming up here, but I have some pictures of it. And yeah, so that's when it all started. And I was there for 6 years, and all of a sudden offers came from other schools. John Merritt at Tennessee State University, and yeah, that's how it started.
So, what's the uniqueness of, because so much of the job is recruiting.
Yeah.
And it's a black school. You don't have many whites.
You know, recruiting is recruiting. You know, recruiting is recruiting. You know, a lot of the kids that I was recruiting, of course, you know, were playing, you know, I recruited in all, you know, and I went to the Deep South. So it was different. You know, you had, you know, they would say they were non-segregated, but you had predominantly black to this day. You have big, huge high schools that are probably 90, 95% black. And then you have mixed, but recruiting is recruiting. You know, every kid wanted opportunities to go to college, and I have recruited, which I will say today, I probably drove every red clay road in the state of Mississippi. This is the truth. I've been on every red clay road in the state of Georgia, in the cotton fields of Mississippi, in Louisiana, in the bayous, and I have signed hundreds of kids. Unbelievable stories of young men. Anthony Pleasant, who played 14 years he played with the Browns and the San Francisco 49ers. Nobody recruited him, and I walked in and signed him to a full scholarship at Tennessee State. He played 14 years in the NFL. And then I have a big offensive lineman, Larry Tharp, who blocked for Barry Sanders at Detroit Lions. Big Larry, and also played with the Cardinals. High school coach said, "Coach, you don't want to mess with Larry. You don't want to mess with him." I signed him, and you know, so those two players right there. And then Larry Stargell, a defensive back, played with the Indianapolis Colts. So there's young men who, you know, who Coach O walked in their living room and offered them full scholarship, and they went on to play in the NFL. And really proud of those guys, and we stay in touch. And yeah, you know, but I will tell you this too, is that I literally sat in every living room of every kid I've ever recruited, and a ton of stories. You know, back in the day, some of these kids in the Deep South in February. You know, I would sit in their shotgun home out in the middle of nowhere, and there would be slats in the, you know, they were so poor. Hogs would be running underneath the house, and I would be sitting like this with my scholarship, and there would be one fireplace where there was just heat for those kids to warm up, and literally the family would come up and get ready for school, and the parents would be so proud, you know, their son was going to college on a football scholarship. And you know, I think that meant more to me, you know, working and giving those kids those opportunities. You know, obviously I wasn't going to make a whole lot of money, but you know, it was a great job, and I worked with some great people, and gave a lot of kids opportunities, you know, that, and I love that. You know, you mentioned my dad being a traveling salesman. Well, I had that gene for jumping in a car and driving, and I mean, I literally have been everywhere, and really all over the South and around the country recruiting.
I knew you were offering, because Randy told me, often 3 hots and a cot.
Yeah, I was getting those homes, and you know, Mama, we're gonna give them 3 hots and a cot. 3 hots and a cot, and a lot of those kids, that was their issue. They, you know, they were just not getting the nutrition they needed at home, you know, and you know, we would bring them in for visits, and the big thing, you know, obviously we didn't have the same type of facilities some of these other big schools had, but one thing we would do is feed them. You know, when they would come to visit, we would just give them all they could eat, you know, and put them in a nice hotel. And so, yeah, we just finished that 2 weeks ago. I have 2 young men that I signed up in Memphis, and they grew up in the ghettos of Memphis, and I was up there a month ago in their homes and brought them in and signed them on February the 6th, so yeah.
You also signed a guy named Marcus Jacoby, and you were part of that, which is an incredible story featured on, I think, the New York Times.
Yeah, it was in the Ira Burkhaw spent a whole year with us and won the Pulitzer Prize on that story.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I realize it's covered by the story, but for your camera, for your purposes, it's a white quarterback brought into not even predominantly, almost virtually all black team. That must have been a challenging year for you.
Yeah, it was. You know, it was. You know, it was a young man, you know, during the summer, going into a football season. I think it was in 1996. We had just came out of a national championship year in '95 and graduated our quarterback. And the young man that we had penciled in flunks out of school during the summer. So our starter that we were projecting, and one of our football players, a black wide receiver, said, "Coach, I'm working out with this quarterback. He goes to Louisiana Tech and he wants to transfer." And he said, "Coach, he's a white boy, but he can throw, Coach." And I said, "All right." So as that story begins, I went to watch him throw. And I was impressed, you know, and I went back and told Coach Richardson, Coach Richardson played with the Bills. I watched him coming out of high school, and he was from Youngstown, and we were very close. I said, "Coach, this kid can play." He said, "Well, we need to sign him, Mark. We don't have anybody." And we ended up signing him to a full scholarship, and he came in, and of course it was a tough situation, you know, because I'm white, he's white. The coaching staff was all together on it, but it was some of the players, you know, that had some issues with it. And we started out that season, I think, losing our first maybe 3 games. And there was a time there where the players were going to strike. They were upset. They thought there was favoritism being shown by me. But the head football coach, Coach Hubbard, says, "Look, Marcus is our quarterback." I said, "Marcus is our quarterback." The head coach said, you know, "Hey, he's our quarterback. We're going to have practice at 3 o'clock. Anybody want to come out to practice, be there. If you don't want to be on this football team, you're gone." We went to practice, won the next 7 games, and got into a bowl game at the end of the season. story gets better from there.
I noticed.
But yeah, so, but anyways, you know, hey, that first year, you know, it was, you know, just some crazy things happened. But, you know, I don't know if you heard about the rope in the trees, you know, but, you know, you know, we went through that. Following year, we go 11-1 and win another HBCU national championship, and he's the guy. But the following season, I don't know if you read the story, but the young quarterback comes back, and you know, as coaches, I've never looked at color, and people probably do, but my job was put the best player on the team out on the field at the time to help us win a game. And Marcus' thing was, if there was some, he wasn't as elusive and had as much speed as the backup, and so if we couldn't block them all, I had to put somebody out there that could make a miss. Marcus couldn't do that, and I ended up putting the other young man in, and Marcus just had a hard time taking that being benched in that situation, and quit the team.
And football.
And quit football. Walked away from it cold turkey, and I have never talked to the young man since. And of course, Ira came in. I thought he did a great job in that story, really telling the story of what happened. You know, it wasn't a racial thing. You know, it was kind of a coaching decision that Marcus witnessed when he came back to watch us play again. Yeah. You know, it was just about winning and putting the best guy on the field to get the job done, and that was my job. You know, but
what was life like at home for you during that couple of years? Did you get threats?
Well,
I mean, Marcus.
What happened was there was a situation where I was sitting in the office with Marcus. We were looking at some film, and a call came in. You know, and I answered the phone, and it was, you know, hey, we got, you know, nooses for you and Marcus outside here in our tree, you know, and there was two nooses laying outside in the parking lot from a tree. But you know, I mean, we didn't make a big deal out of it. You know, we just went to work, went to practice every day, and really used it as motivation. You know, hey, and you know, coaching's a crazy profession. You know.
So tell me a little bit about Bill Parcells. Your path across with him.
Wow. So Bill Parcells was at that football camp when I went to Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. In Massachusetts. He was coaching linebackers at Army, and I'm not. He was coaching. So when I got offered at Florida State, Bill became the linebacker coach there too. So I'm not sure, be honest with you, if there was some communication from him to Larry Jones, who was the head coach. I was recruited by Steve Sloan, who played at Alabama. Yeah. And was Joe Namath's backup. Yeah. Steve was the one that saw my high school film and offered me a scholarship. But Steve Sloan and Bill Parcells were very close. Anyways, long story short, in my second year there, in 1974, we had a really heck of a football team, and Bill Parcells was the linebacker coach. But we lost our last game against South Carolina, and if we had won that game, we would have gone on to the Peach Bowl. But we got beat by South Carolina, and on the flight home, the players just really acted out on the flight coming home. And when we got back, Parcells told the head coach, look, we got to get rid of some of this riffraff on the team. So what we did in the winter, starting in January, we had what we call the winter conditioning program. And they took a room about this size and put a wrestling mat on it. They cleaned out the locker room, which was about this size, put a wrestling mat on the ground, put chicken wire about this high, about 5 feet off the ground, and boosted the temperature to about 100 degrees. And Bill Parcells would be out in the middle of this mat in a sweatsuit, and he ran 20 minutes of pure hell of agility drills under this chicken wire. So if you remember the early 70s, you remember everybody I had, my hair, I looked like my grandma Orlando. I had hair way out here, big old, because this doesn't grow long, it grows, And, the brothers on the team had the afros and they were getting caught. And so
the chicken wire is 5 foot.
yeah, so everything you had to do was in a football position. So you had to be under it. So everything was like this. And you were doing all these different agility drills. And then the last minute of it was a pure hand-to-hand combat drill.
Oh my God.
Well, about 30 players quit the team. And Bill Parcells, when things were getting hot in February, this time of the year, gets offered a defensive coordinator job at Vanderbilt. He splits, he sees it's getting hot in the kitchen. He gets out, goes to Vandy. Well, now kids are quitting. The press finds out about it, and there was a huge. But I remember reading it in Sports Illustrated. I think in April 1973, there's an article that comes out in Sports Illustrated about the off-season conditioning program because over 30 players quit. I ended up in the top group. Man, I was probably in the best condition I've ever been in, but I think it really hurt the morale of our football team going into the following season because we were awful. Yeah, we were awful.
Have your paths crossed with him since?
Yeah, I would, later bump into him at coaching conventions later. And, he would smile, we would shake hands, but it wasn't much more than that. And this was while he was coaching college ball.
Oh, sure.
And then, of course, the rest of the story about him. Yeah.
Now you're at Grambling. Did your paths ever cross? Eddie Robinson?
Oh, I coached against Eddie probably almost 20 times.
Okay.
So he got his 300th win against me at Florida A&M back in 1984. My first game ever coaching against him was in 1978. That year we won the national championship at Florida A&M. My first game coaching against Grambling was in the Orange Blossom Classic in the Orange Bowl in Miami. And we beat them, and then we went into the playoffs. But at Southern, from 1993 to 2000, I think for 7 years. So I think 97 or 98. 93 through 97, we beat them every Bayou Classic. I don't know, have you ever, the Bayou Classic was on NBC every year that Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And we were on national television every Saturday every Saturday after Thanksgiving. It was an NBC game. It was played in the Superdome in New Orleans.
Well, I can remember that. And Eddie Robinson, from your perspective, he's sort of the Bear Bryant.
Yeah. He had broken Bear's coaching record, with the most wins. But, there was always an asterisk by it because, smaller school, HBCU school. But, he was a legend back in those days, man. I mean, and up until when he passed away, and it's such a big influence right now at Grambling. Even
they have things named after him?
Oh, yeah, well, they have the Eddie Robinson Museum, which we brought our recruits in when they come in on campus, and there's a huge tradition there.
You looking forward to this year?
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. We were right there in this last year's Bayou Classic. We should have won the game. We had a field goal blocked the last drive of the game that would have put us in the conference championship game. So, yeah, and we've got a lot of kids coming back. So, yeah, I'm still out there grinding, still working at it. And
I really look forward to catching up with you again, Mark, sometime.
Yeah.
Cameron, did you have any last-minute questions?
I just had one, but I would imagine that the recruiting and seeing how these players develop is probably the most enriching part of what you see.
Yeah.
Could you have ever imagined that when you were looking to become a coach so long ago?
No, I mean, if growing up in Westfield, New York, growing up at Welchfield, you know, wow. Getting an opportunity to go to Florida State and then getting into coaching. When I got into coaching, it just opened up all these doors. And all the guys that I were idols that I was watching would now come and sit in my office as football scouts, NFL guys. Boyd Dollar would come in and sit down. I don't know, did you know many of the Bills back in the day? Did you know like George Sames or Otis Taylor? I'm riding down the elevator, and at Florida A&M, we beat the University of Miami. So Earl Morrall is standing next to me and turns around and says, "Hey, Coach, thanks, man. You guys did a hell of a job whipping our ass, you know, beating us today." And I'm going, oh my God, I'm shaking hands with Earl Morrall, you know. So, no, I would have never, ever imagined it, you know, growing up here, and just I would have never thought in a million years, you know. One thing, and we might be off the cuff here, but I remember in the 5th grade, our teacher would read us Huckleberry Finn. And I remember in the story, they would talk about the Mississippi River. You know, and I would go up to the globe and I would look on that map and go, oh my God, the Mississippi, and where Westfield was. And I would think, man, that is so far away. Well, Southern University was right on the banks of the Mississippi River. And it was like, oh my God, this, you know, everything I used to dream about, I never thought in a million years would come true. You know, I would be down there, and so, yeah, it's been an unreal ride. It's been an unbelievable journey, and still going on. It's still going on. I don't know how much longer, but it's still happening. You know, and I went through tonsil cancer 2 years ago, so, you know, I'm hoping I'm speaking a little better, but I thought it was over. You know, I was ready to retire, and Coach Fobbs, who played under Coach Robinson at Grambling, called me up and said, "Hey, you got some more play calling in you?" And I said, "Yeah, Coach." And he said, "Well, come on, I need a play caller." And so I'm back at Grambling, and so this will be year 44 coming up.
Good for you.
Year 44. So I would feel more comfortable probably in front of 70,000 in the game than I'm probably going to feel out there in front of them folks. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great journey, and a lot of people that are in this Hall of Fame here had a lot to do with it too. You know, watching Chuck Chris play as a little, you know, in Salamanca and Odd, you know, I went, oh my God, this guy's going to Penn State. You know, he's from a small little town in western New York. Shoot, I can go to a big college. You know, Bob Pelsick played college football at University of Dayton with Pete Richardson. Well, I sit across from Pete, and on my interview with him, and I said, "Coach, before you start any football, 2 things I gotta let you know is, number 1, I watched you play for the Buffalo Bills in high school, and number 2, I went to the same high school that Bob Pelsick did in Dunkirk." And he just started smiling. Him and Bob were teammates, and so we coached together for 20 years.
That's incredible.
And then, of course, Coach Moscato. You know, Coach Moscato was unbelievable. You know, Phil Young at Westfield. You know, those were guys. Vinny Calarco sitting in his bar. You know, when my uncle was a little guy, when they were playing, you know, summer league baseball teams for Vinny that he would sponsor in the summertime.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mark. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mark. Well, I got